The Great Smoky Mountains are one of the most visited places in the United States. Millions walk these trails every year. Most believe this land is fully known, mapped, understood. That belief is wrong. Beneath these mountains are things that were abandoned, sealed, or quietly left behind. Old tunnels missing from maps, structures with no clear purpose, warnings passed between locals, never posted on signs. These are real places, real mysteries, and none of them were meant to be part of the visitor experience. Lock your doors, turn off the lights, and pull your blanket tight, because after this video, you will never see the Great Smoky Mountains the same way again. Abandoned mining tunnels that were never mapped. Long before the Great Smoky Mountains became a national park, this land was not protected. It was worked. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, prospectors moved into the region searching for minerals. Copper, iron. Small-scale operations spread across the mountains, cutting into hillsides and carving tunnels deep into the rock. Most of these mining efforts failed. They were never profitable enough to last. When the national park was established, mining was halted. Operations shut down. Workers left. What remained were tunnels, shafts, underground passages that were never fully documented. Official park records acknowledge that abandoned mines exist within and near current park boundaries. That is not disputed. What is disputed is how many there are. Detailed public maps showing their exact locations do not exist. Some entrances collapsed naturally. Others were sealed intentionally. Over time, forests reclaimed the land. Old access roads disappeared. Erosion altered the terrain. On the surface, the mountains appear untouched, but hikers have reported strange details that suggest otherwise. Depressions in the ground where the soil feels hollow, sudden drops in temperature near rock faces, cold air venting upward from places where no cave is marked. These reports are not promoted by the park. Exploration of abandoned mines is strongly discouraged, and for good reason. Mine shafts are unstable. Oxygen levels can drop without warning. Heavy metals remain in the soil. Rescue inside a collapsed tunnel is almost impossible. Still, there are no warning signs marking former mining zones. No fences in many areas. Visitors can walk directly over old industrial sites without realizing it. Park officials have confirmed that some mine locations are intentionally not publicized. The stated reason is safety, but that decision creates a disturbing uncertainty. If the entrances are hidden and the maps are incomplete, how many tunnels remain undiscovered by the public? And how many have already been stumbled upon accidentally? There are documented cases of hikers encountering unmarked openings in remote areas, some partially filled with debris, others sealed just enough to suggest something lies beyond. No official numbers are released. What exists underground is acknowledged, but rarely discussed. The Great Smoky Mountains are marketed as pristine wilderness, a place of nature, a place of safety. But beneath that image lies a forgotten industrial network, never fully erased, only buried by time, vegetation, and silence. The tunnels are not legends. They are real. The mystery is not whether they exist. It is how many remain hidden, and how close the public comes to them without ever knowing what lies beneath their feet. Disappearances that do not follow normal patterns. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is one of the most visited national parks in the United States. More than 10 million people enter it every year. With that many visitors, accidents are expected. Injuries happen. People get lost. Most cases follow familiar patterns. This one does not. Over the years, a small but persistent number of disappearances inside the Smoky Mountains have raised quiet concern among search teams. Not because people vanished, but because how they vanished did not make sense. Some individuals were experienced hikers. Others were families walking short, marked trails. In several documented cases, people disappeared within minutes of being last seen. In areas with no steep drops, no fast-moving water, no extreme weather at the time, search operations were launched quickly. Park rangers, volunteers, law enforcement. Yet the results were often the same. No tracks, no equipment, no clothing. Sometimes personal items were found later. Shoes placed neatly on the ground, backpacks resting in open areas, not scattered, not damaged. left behind in ways that did not match panic or struggle. In certain cases, search dogs lost scent abruptly, as if it ended rather than faded. Officials point out that dense forests can hide evidence, that wildlife can move objects. Those explanations account for some cases, but not all. What unsettles search personnel is repetition. Similar details appearing in different disappearances, separated by years. Sudden silence, abrupt loss of trail, no logical direction of travel. Weather conditions often changed after the disappearance, complicating recovery. That is common. What is not common is how often searches produced nothing at all. In some cases, remains were discovered months or years later in areas that had already been searched thoroughly. That raises an uncomfortable question. How were those locations missed? Park officials stress that no single explanation connects these cases. Each disappearance is treated individually. That statement is accurate, but it does not erase the pattern. The Smoky Mountains contain steep terrain, thick vegetation, and limited visibility. They can overwhelm even experienced hikers. Still, seasoned rangers have privately acknowledged that some cases feel different, not dramatic. Not suspicious in a criminal sense, just wrong. There are no warning signs explaining these risks beyond standard safety notices. No mention of unusual disappearance patterns. Visitors enter believing the danger is predictable. Slip, follow, exposure. But some disappearances do not align with those scenarios. No evidence of injury, no indication of prolonged survival attempts, just absence. The park does not promote these stories. There is no benefit in doing so. Yet among search teams and local communities, the cases are remembered, not as legends, as unresolved files. The most disturbing part is not that people vanish in the wilderness. It is that in certain areas of the Smoky Mountains, they vanish in ways that leave no trail to follow, no final location, no clear sequence of events. Only a moment where someone was there, and the next moment they were not. In a park crossed by millions of footsteps each year, some disappearances remain untouched by explanation, not because they are unbelievable, but because nothing left behind explains how they happened. Unmarked structures deep in the forest. Deep inside the Great Smoky Mountains, far from visitor centers and paved overlooks, there are places that do not fit the landscape around them, not natural formations, structures. Hikers who venture off popular trails have reported coming across stone walls, stacked foundations, and partial enclosures hidden beneath dense vegetation, not cabins, not shelters, something older. These structures are not listed on official park maps. They are not mentioned in brochures, and most visitors never see them. Some appear as low stone rectangles, barely rising above the forest floor. Others resemble collapsed walls built deliberately, not formed by erosion. The craftsmanship suggests planning, purpose, yet their function is rarely explained publicly. Historians acknowledge that before the park existed, the Smoky Mountains were home to settlements, logging camps, and isolated communities. That is documented, but many of the structures found today do not match known homesteads. They are too remote, too far from water, too far from established roads. In some cases, hikers report multiple structures clustered together, suggesting coordinated use. Not a single family, something organized. When these findings are reported to park officials, the responses are often brief. Some are attributed to old agricultural activity, others to temporary logging operations, but no detailed records are provided. What unsettles people is how quickly the subject is redirected. Rangers do not deny the structures exist. They simply do not elaborate. There are no plaques, no historical markers, nothing explaining who built them, when, or why they were abandoned. In certain areas, visitors claim they were advised to leave without explanation after mentioning what they found. Not threatened, not escorted, just encouraged to move on. The structures themselves show signs of age. Stonework weathered by decades of exposure, trees growing through foundations. Whatever they were used for, they were left behind long ago. The question is why they remain undocumented. The Great Smoky Mountains have been extensively surveyed, trails mapped, features catalogued, and yet these structures sit in silence, hidden from the official narrative of untouched wilderness. Some researchers suggest the park avoided publicizing certain sites to prevent looting or vandalism. That explanation is reasonable, but it does not explain why entire clusters are missing from public records, or why their original purpose is rarely discussed at all. To hikers who stumble upon them, the experience is deeply unsettling, not because the structures are dangerous, but because they should not be there without explanation. They suggest activity, intent, and abandonment without closure. In a park defined by nature, these remnants point to a human presence that does not fit neatly into history books or tourist narratives. The forest has done its best to erase them, roots cracking stone, leaves filling corners, but not completely. Enough remains for people to find them by accident, enough to raise the same question every time. If these structures are known to exist and their locations are not shared, what else lies hidden in the Smoky Mountains, simply because it does not belong to the image the park wants visitors to see? In the deep forest, surrounded by silence, these unmarked structures stand as reminders that some parts of the Smokies were built, used, and abandoned, and then quietly forgotten on purpose. The sounds rangers refuse to explain. In the Great Smoky Mountains, sound behaves differently once the trail's empty. During the day, the forest is alive. Wind through trees, birds, insects. At night, it should grow quieter. In some areas, it does not. For decades, hikers, campers, and even park employees have reported hearing sounds in the Smokies that do not fit the environment around them. Not once, not rarely, repeatedly. The reports vary in detail but not in tone. Heavy footsteps moving through dense brush when no trail exists. Metallic knocking sounds echoing from deep within the forest. Low rhythmic impacts that seem too deliberate to be falling trees or shifting rock. Some campers describe hearing what sounds like something being dragged across the ground. Slow, controlled. Others report sudden crashes followed by complete silence. No animal movement, no retreat, just quiet again. Park officials attribute most unexplained sounds to wildlife. Elk, bears, falling limbs. Those explanations account for many situations, but not all. What unsettles experienced listeners is familiarity. Long-time hikers know the difference between animals moving and something else. They know how sound travels through these mountains. Yet certain reports come from people who insist the noise did not behave naturally. Footsteps that stopped when they stopped. Movement that changed direction deliberately. In some cases, rangers responding to calls found no evidence of animals in the area. No tracks, no disturbed ground. The incidents were logged, then quietly closed. Among park staff, the subject is handled carefully. Rangers do not deny that unusual sounds are reported. They simply avoid elaborating. There are no official briefings explaining recurring auditory anomalies. No public advisories beyond standard wildlife warnings. Some areas have developed informal reputations, places where backcountry campers are subtly discouraged from staying overnight. Not forbidden, just advised. When asked why, the answers are vague. Hard to sleep there, not much reason to camp. The forest itself offers no clear source. The terrain is steep, the vegetation thick. Sound should scatter, fade. Instead, some noises carry with unnatural clarity. What disturbs people most is timing. The sounds often begin after midnight, when human activity is minimal, and they stop suddenly. No retreat, no fade out, as if whatever caused them decided to stop. There are no confirmed recordings that explain the phenomenon conclusively. Audio captures exist. They are inconclusive, too distorted, too brief. Enough to suggest something occurred, not enough to identify it. Officials emphasize there is no known threat, no danger specific to these sounds. That may be true, but it does not address why the same reports surface again and again, or why certain zones generate them consistently. The Great Smoky Mountains are ancient, layered, hollowed by water and time. The landscape can amplify sound in unpredictable ways. That explanation is reasonable. What remains unexplained is the precision, the sense that some sounds follow movement, respond to presence. In a park defined by nature, these auditory anomalies leave a lasting impression, not because they prove anything extraordinary, but because they resist dismissal. Campers leave early, hikers change routes, and rangers file reports that end with the same conclusion. No source identified. In the Smoky Mountains, not every mystery is seen. Some are heard, And once you hear something you cannot place, the forest no longer feels empty. It feels occupied by something that moves, listens, and disappears before anyone can explain what made the sound in the first place. Areas that seem open until they are not. In the Great Smoky Mountains, most boundaries are clearly marked. Trails have signs, restricted zones have notices. At least that is what visitors expect. In reality, there are areas inside the park where access feels open right up until the moment it is not. Hikers describe walking along unmarked paths, game trails, or old service roads that appear unused but unrestricted. No fences, no warning signs, just forest. Then suddenly something changes. Sometimes it is a ranger appearing without warning, asking calm but firm questions. Other times it is a verbal instruction to turn back. No explanation given, not angry, not urgent, just final. Visitors often assume they crossed into a protected ecological zone or wandered off trail. That happens. What unsettles people is how often these encounters occur far from any marked boundary. There are no maps showing where these invisible lines begin. No public explanation for why certain areas are quietly controlled while others remain open. In some cases, hikers report being told the area is not meant for public access, not dangerous, not closed, just not meant to be entered. When asked why, the answers stop. Park officials emphasize that access rules vary by season, terrain conditions, and environmental protection needs. That explanation is accurate, but it does not explain the lack of visible boundaries. Why some areas are restricted without signage, why enforcement appears selective. Long-time visitors notice patterns, certain ridgelines, certain valleys, certain stretches of forest where people are consistently turned back, not because of weather, not because of wildlife activity at the time, because of location. Rangers do not discuss these zones publicly. They do not deny they exist. They simply do not elaborate. Some areas are described as administratively closed. That phrase appears in internal documentation. To the public, it means very little. Administratively closed areas do not always look closed. They look untouched, unrestricted, until someone steps too far. What disturbs visitors is not being stopped. It is how quietly it happens. No report filed, no ticket issued, just a request to leave and not return. In a park that welcomes millions of people each year, these invisible boundaries stand out. They suggest that not every rule is meant to be obvious, that some restrictions are enforced through presence rather than signage. Locals are often aware of these zones. They do not advertise them. When asked, they give short answers. "Oh, you don't need to go there. There's nothing for visitors." No fear in their voices, just certainty. The Great Smoky Mountains are vast, complex. Not every area is suitable for tourism. That is understood. What remains unsettling is how much of that decision-making happens quietly, without explanation, without public maps. Visitors are led to believe the park is fully accessible unless marked otherwise. These areas challenge that assumption. They exist as blank spaces inside a place that feels completely known. No signs to warn you, no fences to stop you, only the realization that you were allowed to walk there until someone decided you were not supposed to anymore. And once that happens, no one explains what lies beyond the invisible line you just crossed. In the Smoky Mountains, some boundaries are not drawn on maps. They are enforced by silence. And the people who encounter them leave with the same uneasy feeling that there are parts of the park you can reach easily, but were never meant to explore. Not because of danger, but because of what the park quietly chooses to keep out of view. The old warnings locals still follow. Long before the Great Smoky Mountains became a national park, people lived here year-round. Families, communities. They knew the terrain, they knew the weather, and they knew which areas to avoid. What is unsettling is that some of those warnings never disappeared. Even today, locals who grew up near the Smoky Mountains still repeat the same advice. Not written, not posted, spoken quietly. There are places where long-time residents will tell you not to linger. Not because of wildlife, not because of cliffs or flooding. They simply say it is not a good place to be. These warnings are not dramatic. They are practical. Don't camp there. Don't go into that hollow. Leave before dark. When asked why, the answers stop. Some say the area feels wrong. Others say people used to disappear there. A few say nothing at all. What matters is consistency. The same locations are mentioned again and again across generations. These are not marked danger zones. They are not restricted areas. Trails pass nearby. Tourists walk past them every day, but locals avoid them without hesitation. Park officials do not acknowledge these warnings publicly. They do not deny them either. There are no records labeling these places as hazardous. No official explanation attached to them, and yet rangers are familiar with the reputation of certain spots. In private conversations, some admit that visitors are subtly discouraged from camping or wandering there, not ordered, not forced, advised. What makes this disturbing is how old some of these warnings are. They existed before the park, before modern trails, before search and rescue infrastructure. They were passed down as survival knowledge. In some cases, the warnings were tied to sounds. In others, to sudden disorientation. In others, to people not coming back when expected. No single story, just avoidance. These locations do not appear on maps. They do not have names visitors recognize. They exist as shared knowledge. And that knowledge persists even as everything else changes. New trails are built. Technology improves. The park becomes safer, but the warnings remain. That raises an uncomfortable question. If these places were truly harmless, why would the advice survive for so long? Fear fades quickly when nothing happens. Yet here the behavior never stopped. Families still say the same things. Hunters still take the long way around. And when newcomers ask why, they are told not to worry about it. Just stay away. The Great Smoky Mountains are presented as a place of beauty and peace, and most of the time they are. But beneath that image is a layer of inherited caution, not based on signs, not based on rules, based on experience. The most disturbing part is not that something dangerous exists in the mountains. It is that whatever caused these warnings never needed fences, never needed explanations, and never needed to be written down. People simply learned. And once learned, they never forgot. In the Smoky Mountains, the oldest warnings are not carved into stone. They are carried quietly and followed without question by the people who know the land best. The Great Smoky Mountains are not hiding one single secret. They are hiding layers, things abandoned, things avoided, things never explained. And the most unsettling part is not what visitors discover, it is what locals already know. If this video made you look at the Smoky Mountains differently, leave a like.